Good morning and welcome to the Estel Centre here in Berlin for the IDTechEx Show. We've got a truly exciting show for you, and what makes this event really unique is that we are covering a range of really exciting emerging technologies, but in particular we're looking at their commercialization. So at this event we have many global brands, users from many different vertical industries coming together, and they'll be looking at what's on the roadmap and what technologies are coming through. It's really our objective, therefore, that you leave this event with a really clear understanding of the current capabilities of these different technologies, what is the roadmap of these different technologies going forward, and also critically those connections, thanks to the networking we'll be doing here, which allow you to really achieve your objectives. So a little bit about IDTechEx. For those of you who are new to us, of course, we are the host of this event. Our aim is to really provide value-added services to enable you to really get into new technologies, making the best strategic decisions. We help companies understand complex areas by providing clarity in these sectors, and we focus on a diverse range of emerging technologies, many of which, however, are interrelated. And you can see some examples here. The way we do that is that we have a team of analysts, many of whom are experts in their field, and they spend a lot of time around the world going to companies, doing site visits, going to events, collating lots of information, and we disseminate that information, we dissect it, and when we analyze it and we see the trends going forward. So one of the things that makes this event particularly unique is that the event is organized by our analysts, and that our analysts cherry pick which speakers to have present. And as a result, you can really understand what are the hottest things going on, because we pick the topics and the speakers that we think should be of most interest to you. In terms of the topics covered at this event, for those of you who've been here for a few years, you know now that we cover a few interrelated topics with one combined trade show. Each of these topics will be covered in the form of a full two-day conference with many speakers. We have over 240 speakers in total. But the main aspect, and the reason why this works so well, is that we cover the whole value chains of these different sectors, which are very much interrelated. For example, if we look at manufacturing, we cover printing in the form of printing thin films and printing electronics, but also additive printing, going into areas such as structural electronics. If we look at advanced materials, we cover things such as graphene, conductive inks, carbon nanotubes, other types of films. Some of those are being used, for example, to create better energy storage solutions, and in turn, they are being used in sectors such as electric vehicles, IoT, wearable, powering consumer electronics, and much more. So many of these things are very much interrelated, and this event covers the whole supply chain from materials through to these new enabling components and the manufacturing equipment to create them, and also the end-use applications. So for the big end-user brands here who are looking to understand what is coming through and how they can differentiate, they can see what are the different components available and the different material capabilities that they can start to plan in. And similarly, if you're a material company on the other side of the value chain, then you can look to see and question end users here at the show and find out what their challenges are and what they're looking to do. So this has proved very fertile in the past, and we hope that you also have the same experience over the next few days at this show. In terms of who is here attending the event, you can see in the pie charts on this slide the types of people we have attending by job function and also their position in the value chain. We have a truly international event with attendees coming from 56 countries. And about a third of the attendees represented are product managers, others also being in R&D and others in business development. If we look at where attendees are coming from in terms of their company position in the value chain, then about 20% are coming from materials-based companies, similar number from components, equipment, and also end users and integrators. And of that end user and integrator sector, the main vertical industries represented here are shown on the right. They include automotive, consumer electronics, healthcare, infrastructure, media, and textiles and fashion, in addition to the others shown there. So it is a very diverse range of vertical industries, but with a common need for many of these different types of components and technologies coming through. And overall, the show is substantially growing compared to the number of pre-registrant attendees at the 2016 show last year. We are up 22%. And last year, the event was up 17% in terms of the number of pre-registered attendees versus the 2015 show. So certainly there's a lot of growing momentum, and I think that's partly due to this sort of analyst-led event and also covering the most exciting and hottest topics. We also have a really interesting and diverse exhibition for you to spend some time looking around. In total this year, we have 193 exhibitors coming from 23 countries. On top of that, we also have 30 posters from organizations around the world. I'd like to particularly thank our key sponsors. Our platinum sponsors this year are MGI Ceradrop and Novacentrix, both involved in equipment supply. And in terms of our silver sponsors, you can see we have a diverse range of companies here, everything from materials, those involved in machinery and equipment, through to those who make, for example, silicon components. But looking at the pie chart on the left, you can see the complete breakdown of exhibitors by what these companies do, with a roughly even number being involved in material supply and an even number being involved in equipment supply. But about 40% of the exhibiting companies are here to show new innovative components or complete products and product solutions. And 12% offer services, including software and integration. So really the whole value chain is going to be on show here, and we hope you find it very interesting as you walk around and you meet the different capabilities that will be shown. The other important thing about this event is that because IDTechEx is a market research firm, we have a good understanding as to where all these technologies are and where they're going. We are going to be highlighting to you throughout this program where is the money in these different markets. Usually with many emerging technologies, there's always an element of technology push, and the big initial markets may not be the ones that companies thought they would initially be. Indeed, we often find that companies tend to do quite well, but they don't tend to talk much about it. Well, it's our job to uncover those opportunities for you, and that's why we've chosen speakers in this program to highlight all those areas of opportunity and where the money really is now. In addition to that, it's also important to look at how to get new technologies to market. And this event will be looking at what is the true value of these different emerging technologies, going beyond just being a bit cheaper than the incumbent technology, which is usually doomed to failure, whereas companies are now looking to actually premium price their products based on extra value. And so we'll be looking at where that value is with inputs from case studies and users and companies involved in the market. And another element to that is also looking at creating completely new products. So not just replacing something that already exists or improving on something slightly, but creating a completely new product category. And that usually involves the strong partnerships. And this is the platform where we hope you can build that ecosystem, and also the input of creative product design. And some of those companies will also be here at the show, giving you that full capability of networking. So I'm now going to go through some of the key topics of the event and give you an overview as to what's going on with a slide on each, just to whet your appetite as to what is to come over the next few days. Firstly, we'll start off with printed, flexible, and organic electronics. In 2017, the market size of this industry is just over $29 billion. The majority of that is in OLED displays, which are not made predominantly by printing today, but in future that's a possibility. But in terms of what is made predominantly by printing today, it's mainly sensors and conductive ink, about 26% of this whole spectrum of items that we look at when we look at the printed, flexible, and organic space. But I think what's emerged quite clearly is that printing isn't a particularly strong driver, at least from a user point of view. What is the strongest driver is the new form factors that this enables. And so of the number of or the market value of components in 2017, 40% are predominantly flexible, or they're on a plastic substrate, allowing them to be conformal. And over the next 10 years, we see that by 2027, 63% of the components in this category will be on a non-glass substrate. So that starts off with being on a plastic base, they're more robust, moving through to being conformal and later fully flexible. At the bottom here are a few examples of the sorts of things you'll be hearing more about at the event, from those in the display industry looking to differentiate away from LCD on glass, moving to things like conformal LCDs, leveraging a lot of their LCD supply chain, to new types of lighting, including hybrid electronics, where we have inorganic LED dyes on flexible substrates deposited by printing. Then we have flexible arrays of sensors, and then high growth areas include in-model electronics, part of the structural electronics theme you'll be hearing about at the event, and also stretchable conductors, which can be used on things like e-textiles, opening opportunities in the wearable technology sector. Speaking of wearable technologies, that's another strong theme this event. The market for wearable technologies in 2016 was $32 billion. And we're going to be focusing on, in particular, the two main growth areas. That is smart textiles in the main, which is a small slither at the moment, about $150 million, but with a compound annual growth rate over the next 5 years of 66%. And the other area where we've got a particularly strong session in terms of the conference program content is around AR and VR, where there's been a lot of investment going in, but lots of unsolved technology problems. And we're going to be addressing some of those problems and how companies can get ahead more quickly. We'll also be looking at challenges in the more conventional spaces of smartwatches and fitness trackers, where revenue growth is now slowing due to commoditization. And there we'll be looking at how these new types of components and form factors will enable differentiation for you. And in terms of the medical device market, we'll be looking at this sort of combination of life sciences with electronics, opening new markets. And while it is slow moving because of the health repercussions, there's certainly lots going on, and we'll be highlighting that at the event. And later on in Cornerstones, you'll be hearing from one such company. Another strong area, of course, that we cover is connected things under the banner of the Internet of Things. And it's come quite clear now that the numbers of sensing nodes are not being sold in the billions and billions envisaged by now. But the real focus of our event is to help you understand where are the successes and where the successes will be over the medium term and ultimately the long term. And here's a summary of what those key areas are, and you'll be hearing much more about this at the event. First, on the top left, we have government-led projects, and the main highlight here is smart meters, where EU 27 countries are targeting 80% market penetration of smart meters in 2020. That means installing about 50 million smart meters a year, and the suppliers into that are doing quite well. The second biggest application for smart cities for IoT is street lighting, with already many full rollouts happening in different cities around the world, and more of that will be covered at the show. On the other hand, in IoT, in the consumer space, smart home is experiencing rapid growth, really beginning over the next 18 months or so in the area of thermostats, lights, voice control, and so on. And if we look at, for example, Amazon's ecosystem, then 14 million units of that have been sold in a relatively short period. And there's a lot of traction there with other companies now entering that sector. So we expect to see a lot more progress and sales in that area. And if we look at the bottom left in terms of IoT use in industry, what we found, based on research at IDTechEx, is that companies are not frivolously deploying high numbers of sensor nodes everywhere, just because it's nice to sense everything. They're deploying them where they have a particular problem, and they're looking to receive a strong payback. So it's being deployed, if you like, in sort of pockets where the numbers of nodes being used is not perhaps particularly high, but there's strong value and coming through for the customer, and the value for the suppliers, mainly in the systems provision and the software provision. One of the particularly strong areas, which we'll be covering more in the program with different case studies around this concept of Industry 4.0, is predictive maintenance. That is using sensing to know when a key item is near failure, so something can be done about it before it actually fails. And one of the concepts there is this idea of digital twins, where you can mirror a physical object in a virtual world and you get a sense of how it's doing, and it alerts users as to when it needs to be maintained before it turns into a bigger issue. Also part of this world of connected things, but at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of being simplest and lowest cost, but being deployed in the highest volume, is the humble RFID tag. The RFID has taken 10 years longer than companies thought to really become a big success, but we're now seeing numbers being deployed in truly high volumes 14 billion RFID tags we sold this year, and that's up from just under 10 billion last year. So it's taking jumps of several billion a year now, with very strong payback being shown. In some cases, it's mandated, such as in South Korea, where it's law to put this on bottles of spirits. In other cases, it's being used for stock control on things like clothing, where about 6 billion RFID tags were used just in that application last year. So that is getting a lot of traction at the low end of the pyramid, but the high volume side. So all of these are some of the areas that we'll be looking at in the IoT tracks. And then there's many different types of components, and sensors is a critical one, of course, relating to everything from autonomous vehicles to wearable and IoT, as I've just covered. There's lots to cover in sensors, so I'm not going to try and attempt to give you lots of data in one slide, but to give you a few key takeaway points, I'd say that the main key trends that we are seeing in sensors, which we explore more at this event, are that there's strong progress on miniaturization. For example, if sensors can get to a certain size, then more of them can get into a smartphone. One of the key areas being looked at the moment is to move your touch sensor to beneath the screen. This is now possible thanks to OLED displays covered earlier, because they're semi-transparent, unlike LCD displays. But here the fingerprint sensor needs to be less than a millimeter thick. So miniaturization is key to enable that market. In other areas, we have lower power consumption and also new form factors, which is opening up opportunities. For example, we're moving towards having large area capacitive switching, which can be based on transparent conductive films, which can be thermoformed, or they can be sort of molded over 3D objects to give you switching capability, but without integrating lots of mechanical switches. Another area that we see is particularly strong in demand in terms of research and development, and more companies getting in, is around environmental gas sensing. We've recently released a report on this, and we see it becoming a $3 billion market in 2027. It's one of the key sensing types which isn't yet in consumer goods. It's not in mainstream mobile phones. And now with lots of concern about air pollution, air quality levels, and even sensing things like, is the fish you're about to eat okay or not, I think a broadband gas sensor could have many uses. And here companies also agree, because sensing companies are pursuing this vigorously, trying to get them smaller, looking not just at things like consumer phones, but other applications, including IoT, sensing nodes, wearables, and also things like collaborative robots. So there's a lot of progress in the sensor space, with companies growing. Some are consolidating through acquisitions. That's leading to a few large companies, but also many small ones coming through with innovative sensing technologies, which you'll be meeting at this show. Another critical enabling component which we cover is energy storage. And really at this event, we cover two main tracks around energy storage innovations. The first is looking at what's coming beyond conventional lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are great technology. They're lightweight. They've given us things like drones, but they're only improving by about 5% each year. We want something that improves by a factor of 5. And so here we're beginning to see advanced lithium-ion batteries being used, with opportunities for material companies, and later on from 2022, because of big backing from many car companies around the world, even post-lithium-ion batteries in vehicles. The reason why vehicles is of great interest, simply you can see from the chart here that even sectors like an electric bus this year has a greater demand in terms of gigawatt hours for batteries versus all of consumer electronics. So those involved in batteries are also rightly looking at vehicles. But the second type of track that we'll be looking at with energy storage innovations are new form factors of batteries. That includes thin film and flexible batteries. Often here they're enabling differentiation in things like augmented reality glasses, wearable electronics, and creating completely new product categories such as a smart band-aid, which monitors your child's temperature without them noticing it because it's thin and flexible, and that's been on the market for about a year now. So leading on to the automotive industry, one of the reasons why we cover it is that it has so much relevance to everything from sensors to energy storage to structural electronics to energy harvesting and so on. And in its own right, it's going through a huge amount of change. We have, for example, the big disruption coming in the form of autonomous vehicles, where the few large automotive companies around the world are now being joined by technology companies. So the ivory tower of automotive companies is changing for sure, and it's going to be a very interesting space to watch over the next few years. And while business models are changing, we're also seeing strong changes in the powertrain of the vehicle change as well, going from conventional internal combustion engines to a midpoint of 48-volt mild hybrid vehicles, which allow car companies to meet emissions regulations more easily, but ultimately we see it going to pure electric and strong hybrid vehicles. At the moment, for pure electric vehicles, batteries are a large part of the cost, but over time, thanks to things like lightweighting, structural electronics, and also energy harvesting, we'll see them become less of the overall cost with opportunities for energy-independent hardware. And meanwhile, through all these changes in the powertrains, the business models are changing. So we expect around 2030 a peak car scenario, as we have apps which can demand autonomous vehicles to come pick you up wherever you are without you having to buy a vehicle in itself. So this really is going through a lot of change, still a lot of growth, there's a lot of excitement, and there's many car companies here through to all the different types of technologies, from the powertrain to the sensors, the energy storage, which will be covered as well. And related to that is this world of energy harvesting, which is another key conference theme at this event, and you'll be seeing many examples of this on the trade show floor too. Here, many people relate energy harvesting to generally low power generation, powering things like wireless sensors. And while there's been some success in that, today the most successful companies tend to be those not just selling an energy harvesting component on its own, but those selling the complete system, such as the wireless sensor node, which incorporates the energy harvesting element, because that's where the most value is, as opposed to at the moment selling the components. But another critical part of energy harvesting, and one which we cover, is also on the higher power energy generation side, which is mainly more about electrical engineering, and it goes into much bigger things such as vehicles. In the middle you can see the pizza truck, which is powered by solar. It never needs to have any petrol put in. It doesn't ever have to be plugged in. It's a completely energy independent vehicle. You'll be hearing more from IFEVS in the event about that and other things they're working on. Another area that IDTechEx has recently also been looking at is airborne wind energy, and we have some coverage of that. This is getting a lot of interest now, with many different types of technologies being looked at, including from some large companies such as Google. So there's lots of exciting things going on in this area, and we're going to show to you the whole spectrum from low power to high power and all the opportunities that are materializing from this key enabling technology. And then last but not least, in terms of some of the high-level topics we're covering, there is 3D printing. And this is experiencing strong growth over the next 10 years, even near on exponential growth. Today, the largest markets for 3D printing are automotive, aerospace, and the hobbyist industry, although aerospace is growing the fastest at 34% compound annual growth rate, and that will become the largest market in 2027. It comes as no surprise then that there's a lot of interest in 3D metal printing, given that aerospace and automotive are strong areas, and so we're seeing the leaders getting involved in some mergers and acquisitions going on, but also more players entering the market, particularly the lower cost 3D metal printing side. Applications like hobbyist, dental, and medical, meanwhile, are seeing good unit growth, and by 2027, a new category will emerge, which will be quite strong. It will be second after the aerospace application, and that will be bioprinting, and our event will be covering more on that too. So I hope that's whet your appetite as to what you're going to be hearing about over the next few days. There's certainly lots of exciting things, and one of the unique things about the show, as I mentioned, is that it really tries to bring all these technologies together for you, because as hopefully, as you've seen, they're very much interrelated. A few things I'd like to highlight for you for the trade show floor before I introduce you to the Cornerstone speakers. We have lots going on, including things such as apparel zone, where you can see many different types of e-textiles and wearables. This year, for the second year running, we have Launchpad, and this is where we wanted to highlight some leading companies, small-scale companies. They're spin-outs, but with a product or concept to show. These range from showing you some really interesting sensor innovations through to complete vehicles. So do take a look at some of these companies. They're small now, but they could be very big in the future. And that's in addition to the usual manufacturing street where you can see equipment being working on hand and ask the experts your questions there, plus demonstration street. In addition, there's much more going on, and here are just a few things that you can see. We have, for example, several types of solar cars. So these are completely energy independent vehicles combining structural electronics with energy harvesting, in some cases 3D printing, and electric vehicles. If you've never driven a Tesla, well, now's your chance. Tesla are here, and they've got a car you can test drive. Go and see their stand to learn more how to do that. We have posters from 30 organizations around the world and lots of networking sessions. We also have an awards ceremony later this evening, and there'll be networking drinks around that. And we really hope that you can use the networking sessions to find the contacts you're looking for to progress your business. So without further ado, I'd like to just introduce to you the Cornerstone speakers and then hand them over. So we have a great lineup. As I mentioned, these have been chosen by us because we think they'll give you a great high-level view as to what is going on in these different key areas. Starting off, coming next is VF Innovations. VF is a $12.4 billion company owning brands you know of, such as Timberland, Wrangler, Nautica, and they'll be talking about the future of wearables beyond the hype. Next, we have Galvani Bioelectronics, which last year was arguably one of the world's best funded startup companies. It's a $675 million joint venture between the pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, at $35 billion revenue, and Google's owner Alphabet with about $90 billion of revenue. And it's really the coming together of life sciences and pharma with electronics. And so you'll be hearing about what they're doing in that bioelectronics space. We then have ARM. ARM devices are used by over 80% of the population, and now that we have fairly saturated markets in smartphones and tablets, they'll be talking about what comes next in terms of ubiquitous electronics to flexible electronics. And then last but not least, we have Toyota, one of the world's largest automakers with revenues of over $230 billion, bringing together many of the elements I've spoken about, and they'll be talking about the future of mobility. In terms of the program agenda, after these four great cornerstones, we'll open the exhibition, and then when we come back into the conference tracks, we'll go into the conference tracks on these different topics, which will kick off with an IDTechEx analyst giving you the overall picture, followed by then looking at keynote presentations on these topics, and then take you into the whole 2 days. We hope you have a great IDTechEx show. There's lots to see and learn, and of course, at any point, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us or approach a member of the IDTechEx team if there's any way we can help you.